Welcome everyone to the latest episode of Hotel Tech Unwrapped. The purpose of this podcast is to simplify hospitality technology to empower decision makers generate the greatest return on their technology investment. My name is Denis Ahern.
And my name is Helena O'Brien.
And this week we are talking about phone and voice communications technology in hospitality. So welcome, Helena. How are you this week and how's everything been since the last podcast?
Things have been good. Really, really good. I had a thought over the weekend. I was at my brother's house and I walked through the door and I was greeted by a robot Hoover. And they're very fancy. But one of the thoughts that I actually had was, I wonder when somebody will create one that's so robust it can work in industrial settings, and that as a guest in hotels, you'll actually walk through your bedroom door and you could be greeted by a Hoover just hoovering your room, and there's no person in sight. Like, is that going to happen?
I'd say pretty soon. It's very interesting what you could do. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think the feedback from the last session has been really good. A lot of people asked me what happened to my nose since the last session.
Yeah.
My child, Dara, I was in bed on Saturday morning and he does this thing now where he kind of takes your nose and hides it, but he has sharp nails. So it didn't work out too well for me,
Oh,
and everyone that's met me since is like, did that happen? We were playing a hurling match on Friday night, so did it happen in a hurling match? But no, it's more dangerous being at home in bed with a 1.5-year-old than it actually is playing hurling these days, So
I
it's fun.
did wonder if it was an attack of a hurley, to be fair, when I first saw you. So when you said it was your child, I thought, oh, my God, he's a future hurler anyway.
It's good proof that we don't do makeup for this podcast, So at least there's an upside, But
Yeah.
look, this week's conversation is interesting for us because I think in many ways the phone handset and the phone solution in hospitality has kind of been forgotten about really when it comes to the guest experience and some of the benefits that it can have for a hospitality business. So I think today's conversation will be interesting just to bring some of that back to life, give people ideas around what they can do in this area. And I'm looking forward to it, Selena.
Likewise. And it's interesting that this topic has come up now, because when I meet with any clients of ours and I ask about their phone system, it's very much an afterthought. And what's very interesting is it's something that's very common to have a handset in a bedroom, but it's not a requirement in every country. So it's important for anybody who's listening to check what the requirement is in your region. But for us, it appears to be a universal thing amongst our clients, where an administrative phone system requirement is something that we see for both inbound and outbound communication. So, you can see communication devices is a requirement within the 3, 4, 5-star hotels here in Ireland. But what is a communication device? That's the big thing. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be a phone. So we're going to touch on quite a bit today. But what I would like to start with is if you could give a lovely overview for people who are listening to what considerations should hotels keep in mind when implementing phone systems to ensure both compatibility with existing infrastructure and future scalability.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Yeah, so it's trying to set the scene really for what a kind of your basic requirements are, and then we can build on that as we move throughout the conversation. So, yeah, as you say, it's universal for all our clients to have some form of a phone solution, particularly for running the business from an administrative perspective. And then, as you mentioned, in the guest room, it is a requirement in some sectors and in some countries, etc. I think the fundamentals are, inbound sales calls are still a big part of the phone solution for any hospitality business. So when you talk about inbound sales, if you're missing calls, this has an impact on your revenue, right? So it's very important to get the fundamentals right. So regardless of whether the phone system is more a traditional analog system or it's an IP, so a more internet-based solution, there's some fundamentals that you need to have, right? The first thing we would always say is to have multiple channels for calls. So multiple channels so that you can have multiple inbound and outbound calls at the same time, simultaneously. You still come across a lot of situations where the number of channels for calls is quite limited in hospitality businesses. And therefore, when a potential guest is making a call inbound, you can't get through. You just get an engaged tone.
Yeah.
So make sure that the number of channels is right sized for your business. We typically see minimum of 8, but more typically 16 to 32 channels for a hotel business, so that there can be multiple inbound and outbound running at the same time. The second thing is they have some sort of an integrated voice like receptionist, right? So when you ring the hotel, that you're greeted with a welcome. This is a brilliant branding opportunity, first of all, okay? Secondly, you just make sure that no calls are missed, right? So even if the guest rings and they're presented with a number of options and they press an option, right, and they may still not get to talk to someone, they feel like they've been routed to the right part of the business, and they feel like when they leave a message that the right person is going to contact them back, even if they don't get to speak to someone when they ring. Now, there's multiple ways of kind of configuring that, that whole process, so that, if you ring and you press 4 for accounts, for example, but just say you don't, there's not someone in accounts at the moment, they're on a tea break or whatever. In the background on a modern phone system, you can reroute that call back to reception, and reception can take the message, or you can reroute it to another ring group, etc. And there's lots of ways you can configure that. But I think the most important thing is that there is some sort of like a welcome message. There's some sort of a directory provided to the guest. And what's very interesting now, and it's something that's becoming more and more common, is the integration of different voice assistants, often AI based now. So you can train your own AI bot. So when you press 9, for example, you can speak to an AI assistant who will deal with a lot of FAQs for you. So simple things around parking, early check-in, late check-out, these kind of options, are they available? You can train an assistant to deal with some of this stuff and take the load off your team internally. And of course, you can always have the option of pressing a button then to go forward and talk to a person if you feel like your queries haven't been answered, etc. So, but at a very basic level, enough of channels for inbound and outbound calls to take place for your business. Make sure that's right sized, and then have some sort of a digital, like, integrated receptionist system where you have a welcome message and you're routing calls to the right part of the business. Those would be the two most basic things that I would say are absolutely required, and actually is not dealt with as well as you would expect in modern hospitality.
Yeah, it's interesting you start with this, because I've seen it firsthand here in IMS, where if somebody rings and wants to speak to sales or wants to speak to the knock team, that there's a number of people it will call, and then there's the option to leave the voicemail message, that we don't want a call to be lost. But one thing that I was really impressed by is with certain types of phone systems, there is the option that should there be a power cut or the phone lines go down, it can automatically divert to a dedicated mobile phone number. So you need to always have that handset on charge, obviously. But it means, from the operator's point of view and the guest point of view, the hotel's never closed. Like, they still have the option to call out and receive calls. And that's really, really important, because you don't want to lose any opportunities, whether it's a guest looking to upgrade or to make a booking or to make an inquiry. Like, ultimately, that's enhancing the guest experience, because you're never offline.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so if you extend on from what we spoke about initially, like, there is things that you should definitely think about. I think the power example is a great one. Also, just the phone line, a traditional phone line being unavailable. So how do you cover yourself against these kind of challenges? And what you see a lot now is a few things. So, like, there's some sort of a cloud dimension to phone systems. So that you can have an application on your phone as well, for example. So if you think about the IMS phone solution that we have here for our team, I have an app on my mobile phone. I can ring you now directly from that app to you on the extension. I could be coming from 123 and you could be on 124. And we're essentially making an internal call, even though you could be in America and I could be in Australia. And these kind of options have become more and more important as we move to a more hybrid workforce, so that you can have staff for your hotel business who might be working from home. And if you have some sort of a soft application like interface or integration as part of your phone solution, that's exceptionally useful. When you talk about a power outage in a property and the diversion of that call to a mobile phone, if you think about traditional phone lines, and this was typically how all inbound and outbound calls would have been made in hospitality, you would have a phone line from your telecommunications provider. That phone line can have multiple channels like we spoke about earlier. So there's a load of kind of tiers of line types or service types that you can buy. And you could have up to 32 channels for calls. If you had a complete power outage in a building historically, you could ring your provider and just ask them to do a diversion at the exchange. So like if the phone call was coming into your main landline number, but the PBX was not available, you could ring your provider and ask them to do a diversion to a mobile phone. And that was typically how people managed that situation in the past. Now, as things have evolved, more and more communications is taking place over the internet. So when we talk about IP phone solutions, it's internet protocol, is what IP means. When you talk about VoIP, VoIP, it's voice over internet protocol or voice over IP. Yep. This is now far more common as the kind of communications means for inbound and outbound calls. So moving away from traditional analog-based phone lines. And this is, if you really simplify, think about your home setup, right? For many people now, even if they have a landline in their home, that landline is actually running as a VoIP service, right? So you have a little phone port on your router, but when you plug in a handset, right, they've assigned you a number. That number that whole service is running over the internet now. It's not relying on a traditional telephone line that we would have had years ago. And that's very much the direction of travel in hospitality. When you move to a cloud or a VoIP or an internet-based solution for phone, you open up a whole world of new options. So the diversion process in that situation is much easier. You just it's a self-servicing. You can log into a cloud interface yourself and divert the inbound phone calls to a specific number. If you had an issue with your PBX in the hotel or your traditional phone system in the hotel, if your phone solution itself is based in the cloud, now you're never worried about what happens locally in the property, any power issues, any hardware failure. Everything is based in the cloud. And then that gives you so much more options when we talk about that soft phone application and other things like that, which, just make that whole resilience piece much stronger, much more flexible in terms of how you deploy your solution and how you run your business. And I think sustainability then becomes a key point, because what we've typically seen is your more traditional PBX units that you would have in a hotel comms room in the past can be very power intensive and actually consume a huge amount of power to run your phone system throughout the year. Whereas again, if you're in the cloud, it's much lower consumption. It's a application running on a server. That server you might pay for from AWS or from hosted somewhere like that, rather than having your own dedicated server. So there's loads of, I don't want to get into too much technical stuff, but my key point would be that moving more and more towards internet-based phone solutions, and it delivers much more flexibility and it's much more sustainable actually as an option moving forward.
So if I'm a hotelier listening today and I have an 80-bedroom hotel, for example, and they're all analog, everything is an analog phone, can that be moved to a cloud-based system without me having to go and replace every phone, have a significant investment made in the infrastructure, etc.? Is there a way to do this that's quite cost-effective for me as an operator?
Absolutely. I think, and you come from a place of sustainability first, right? So this idea of, let's not just rip and replace everything. Whatever's in the building that we can use, let's use that. So phone handsets in the guest room, existing phone handsets, a great example. You can keep those there. Okay. And they would be traditionally, they would be analog phone handsets. So they're not network based or IP based, but you put in a little converter unit in the comms rooms, and you convert that then analog phone to IP to communicate with your new cloud-based IP solution, right? So you can keep all those phone handsets. And the only thing you're essentially replacing is that legacy PBX unit, which does consume a lot of power. maybe it could be quite old, maybe you don't have a maintenance contract, maybe you can't get replacement parts, etc. And your only option is to upgrade to a modern, like on-premise based solution, or maybe move to an IP based solution. But absolutely, if you want to convert an existing phone system in that 80-bedroom hotel to a more IP cloud-based solution, you can do this quite easily without having to replace all the handsets,
Excellent. So it sounds like a very beneficial investment for anybody to make, whether you have an analog and you want to move to cloud, or if you're simply putting in a cloud-based system in the first place, right? But from an operational point of view, where are the efficiencies with having an IP phone system or a VoIP phone system in place in the hotel?
Yeah, there's quite a few. So the first thing is that if you think about our communication, the communication simply between staff, that ability, that extension to extension call, especially when you extend it in a soft phone type environment, and if someone's working remote or someone is mobile, they're moving around the hotel, for example, or they're outside, they're on the premises, they're somewhere on the premises, but they're not at their desk. The ability to communicate then with that person quite easily is very useful. Like, it's not a game of phone tag, you're just directly to that person and you can establish that communication. That's the first thing. The second thing would be that the phone handset then in the guest room delivers actually a lot of efficiency opportunities. So when you think about just the ability of the guest to speak to the right department in the business during their stay. So if they want to talk to reception, great. If they want to talk to maintenance, housekeeping, room service, etc. So it becomes that revenue generator as well. If you just want to talk to that AI assistant we spoke about earlier, that would be an option too. That AI assistant, of course, can save you a lot of time for your staff because they're dealing with the kind of basic queries. Likewise, if you get routed directly to who you need to speak to, you don't have to go on a hunt around the hotel to try and talk to the right person in the right department, right? So there's efficiencies there. Then typically what we see is like if you are, in housekeeping or maintenance or other parts of the business, when you're in a guest room, you'd find that the phone systems are integrated with the property management system, and this is something we'd very highly recommend. And I can talk about the benefits of that shortly, but there would be a code pre-configured, say, for housekeeping, multiple codes. So one would be like room clean and available. One would be like room dirty, unavailable. One would be like room clean, but operations or maintenance required. And likewise for operations and maintenance, if they go to that room, they fix the faults that has been identified, they can say room available as well. All of those codes, like a star 94, for example, will tell the PMS that this room is available. I'm the receptionist. I have someone right in front of me in my hotel in the lobby. They're looking to check in. I now know what rooms are available and where I can put these people, and what rooms are not available. So there's huge operational efficiency in that as well. And there is other things, but I think those would be the main areas where I think you can achieve a lot of just efficiency in how your business runs. So.
I am conscious that this is very high level, but at the same time, there's a lot of information in it. So one question that I would have for you is I've stayed in hotels where I've seen interactive directories being shown through the phone, in-room control systems, etc. They seem like really innovative uses of a phone system. But can you elaborate on how this works to enhance the guest experience, maybe even internal sales generation where it's billable and charged back to the guest upon checkout?
Yeah, very good. So like the PMS integration bit is really important from a billing point of view. So in terms of generating revenue, if you integrated the PMS, you can have a whole call plan, like a tariff or a cost plan there for different destinations. So if the guest is in the room, then they can talk to people within the hotel. They can also then make outbound calls from the same phone handset, but those outbound calls are picked up by the phone system and added to the bill for checkout automatically. And that's really useful for generating revenue. It's really efficient, so you don't have to go calculating anything manually. And it's really transparent with the guests. So like they get their bill on checkout, they can query anything if they want. There's no like bill shock after they leave or anything like that. So that PMS integration with the phone system, again, has a lot of advantages. When we look at the kind of regulations and guidance around phone handsets or communication devices in the room, that's more the term that's used, is a communication device. You can look at other options, and you we do see this not as much as one might think, but I think you are in that kind of innovator space at the moment where you have specialist kind of tablets in the room as assistants, and the tablets have multiple apps. One of those will be a communications app that does facilitate that internal communication and maybe external call communication. But then we might have other services like controlling the in-room technology, the lighting, the blinds, etc., the HVAC system, and multiple functions. So it's kind of like this integrated digital concierge in your room, right? And you do see that also available in a more just pure voice availability as well, where you just have a voice assistant in the room. So there is other means to deliver that to meet those regulatory or sort of guidance requirements if they are present. But we do see phone being the most common one at the moment, and I think in the future we could definitely do a podcast episode on the alternatives to phone as this world evolves.
Yeah, I think the great thing with this is, like, if you're somebody listening, particularly in Ireland, where every 3, 4, and 5-star hotel has a telephone in the guest bedroom, there maybe the biggest cost would be the likes of a PMS integration, right, or upgrading to the cloud or whatever. But there's huge advantages to making that investment, because, ultimately it can assist your operations, whether that be maintenance, accommodation, reception, reservations, be more efficient in the day-to-day running. And then, you have your internal sales generation opportunities, and of course your inbound sales bookings as well. So there's massive opportunity to do something quite quickly that could have a very positive impact on your business and ultimately your guest experience. Is there anything else, Denis, that you think is important to touch upon on this particular subject today?
I think that a common term you'll hear in hospitality is this concept of omni-channel. So where you integrate all types of inquiries and guest or customer communications into a single platform. And I just think from a phone solution perspective, you need to be conscious of that. If that's part of your strategy moving forward, if you want to become more efficient and maybe bring all of this kind of communications into a centralized CRM, it's coming from multiple avenues. It could be social, it could be your chat bot on your website, it could be your inbound phone, etc. So I just think it's being conscious of omni-channel and what your long-term strategy is when you think about the phone solutions you want to deploy moving forward. And I think apart from that, it's just to reinforce the message that, there is revenue creation opportunities with a well-designed phone system. There is operational efficiencies to be achieved with a well-designed phone system.
Yeah.
And there is gains in that area of sustainability. I think those is important for everyone to keep that in mind. Don't just forget about the phone system. It's just something we've always had, and there's nothing we can do with it.
Yeah.
If you've got a legacy phone system, without much investment, there is ways of increasing the number of call channels we spoke about. Generally speaking, there's options around that digital receptionist and that routing of calls, and do that in quite a clever way. And the integration, it's rare that you don't find some option for PMS integration and start to leverage more operational efficiencies. So I would just say, don't forget about it. Don't just leave it there. It's worked for 10 years. It does what it does. Some people see it as a cost to their business. It doesn't have to be that way, So that would be kind of my main wrap-up points,
Yeah, no, that's brilliant, because even for myself, like, I just saw a phone system as a phone system when I worked in hotels. Yes, most of the hotels where I worked had integration, but I know in today's world, a lot of hotels don't. And, if somebody's making a phone call from your hotel room, are you aware that this is costing your hotel money, and you may not be billing the customer, but to make that investment, ultimately you have a new potential revenue stream. And from the offset, you might think, it won't be massive. Like, how many people are ringing America today? But actually, it's everything else that it can generate, and what it can do efficiency-wise is fantastic. So whoever your provider is, reach out to them, have a call, and see how you can use your system more efficiently. And if you just have a standard analog system, see what options are out there for you to both generate revenue and operate more efficiently, because there's definitely great opportunity there. So, Dinny, we love our 3 key takeaways, right? So, I think I've hit on it several times now. My number one is a phone system can generate revenue for a hotel and is not just a regional requirement.
Yeah, I agree very much.
What about you?
I think that the operational efficiency bit, I think it's such a topic of conversation at the moment, just ongoing, like the challenges around talent and the cost of talent in the industry. Your phone system can create some operational efficiencies that we have discussed. The integration with the PMS obviously is a critical part of that. But I think that from in our experience, the hoteliers who go after that area, they find actually a lot of benefits. That ability to know in real time at reception that room is available, unavailable, what the issue is, etc. Just simply doing it through the phone system. When you think about the more complicated solutions that are being purchased and looked at, and the fragmented kind of landscape that's developing actually in some of these areas, I think that bit is really important. So operational efficiency, there's a great opportunity there, would be my second key takeaway.
Brilliant. And I'll give the third one to you this week.
Yeah, I think, like, as I say, sustainability, I mean, some of the legacy phone systems that you have in comms rooms in hotels, they're big, big units, and they even run loud. So they use a lot of energy, So that ability to convert to IP and keep your existing analog handsets and just run more efficiently as a business, reduce your energy consumption, reduce your carbon footprint. There's a great opportunity there. And again, I would also link, say, sustainability to the operational efficiency bit as well, because the easier you can communicate, the quicker you can do things, etc. All of this stuff means less consumption, generally speaking. So I think there's an opportunity in that space as well. It's a nice one to add to your plan moving forward.
Excellent. Yeah, brilliant. Denny, it's been an absolute pleasure. A great education for me today now, because I learned an awful lot. So thank you very, very much. I can't wait to share it with everybody. And thanks to everyone for listening.
Super. Thanks, Lena.